Hi, it's Shelly from FaithX, helping you connect your faith and your business with confidence. Today I'm going to do a little bit different thing. I'm going to show you how I memorize some of the verses that are really important to me because I guess it's a little weird. I haven't really heard anybody else doing it. It doesn't mean I came up with it, but it's just very useful for me. I don't consider myself a very good memorizer of anything. So when I found something that really worked for me, I want to share it. So I'm going to first walk you through the process just kind of in general, and then I'll show you how I do it. In general, what I do is I memorize something to a rhythm, whether it's the rhythm of my walking, like each step that I take as I pace around the room or walk around outside, or whether it's like to an actual metronome clicking in the background. And for those of you who don't know, who don't have a music background or something, a metronome is just a device that keeps a beat, like a rhythm, so that you can keep time to the certain pace. So like it'll just click in the background at a certain beat per minute, and you can set it for slower or faster depending on what kind of rhythm you want. So I usually set it, I think, around like 115, 118, somewhere in there, to be fast enough that I can talk and feel like I'm actually doing something. When I walk, I guess I walk approximately about the same speed when I'm memorizing, or maybe a little slower, and I just do 2 beats per step. And this will make way more sense when I start. So if it's not making sense now, don't worry about it. I just wanted to explain kind of like context of what I'm going to be doing, so that when you hear the clicking sound, you know what it is. So there will be clicking in the background as I get going with memorizing this. It helps me pace the words in a way that I can remember kind of like in a pattern. So I'll put a metronome on, or I'll do a walking just to get the beat going, and then I start memorizing whatever the passage is. And I've picked the passages for some significance to me, like something I want to keep in mind or something that's really standing out right now. And I never memorize them really like out of context. I like to know what the rest of the passage is, even if I'm not memorizing the whole passage. I want to know what it means in context so that I'm not just taking something and just being like, okay, now I can apply this to whatever. So when I memorize something, and the reason that this is important is that when I memorize something with this method, I'm memorizing basically a string of words to a beat. So it doesn't have a lot of meaning as I'm memorizing. Like sometimes it just kind of comes up because it's so significant to me, but it's not like I'm really mulling over what the meaning of these things are. I'm memorizing the word string so that I can go back later and have that in my mind as I mull it over about what it means to me in whatever situation it comes up in, because I find that it comes up a lot where I've memorized something and then it just pops up later on. So as I'm memorizing these things to beat the word strings, then after I get it really set, then I'll go back and intentionally think it over and like make sure that I know and understand what does this passage mean that I've memorized now. Like I do some of that before, but I want to make sure that I'm not losing that in just the action and the activity of memorizing. I want to make sure that I have the meaning of what I'm memorizing. And again, when you memorize something, you are memorizing the meaning. Like I think that a lot of the translations are, they're striving to be accurate, right? But each translation translates it a little bit differently. So pick something that you like and then memorize it in that one. If you, like when you hear me doing it, if it doesn't quite match the verse that you're reading, then that's okay. I'm memorizing in one translation and maybe you're looking at a different translation. They should be about the same meanings, but the exact wording might be a little different. So when you memorize, I mean, that comes up a lot. And I think that people who have been Christians or familiar with the church for a while are kind of used to being able to like look at one translation and someone's reading along from another one and just kind of like, okay, yeah, that's kind of, I get the gist. But if it really bothers you, then go into a version that you really know and use that one to memorize. So yeah, now I'm going to do a little demonstration using a passage that I'm already familiar with. I've memorized it back when I was in grad school, but I'm I'm going to start with this one just because it's a little bit easier as a demonstration in case I can't pick up the beat. Like, I'm going to try again after I do this first one. I'll try again with a new one and see how it goes, so you can see it really from the beginning. But if you want to hear just like a brief bit, this is the next brief bit of how it goes. So in Google, if you just search metronome, and it's spelled M-E-T-R-O-N-O-M-E, metronome. If you search that and hit enter, the top result will be a metronome. Google just has a metronome, and you can set it for whatever beats per minute, that's BPM, you want it to be. So I have mine set at 118 just because I picked something. And this is what it sounds like. Can you hear that clicking? Click, 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 click. That ticking is the metronome set at 118. So it's going to be going as I am talking so that I can hear it as it goes. Okay, so I'm pulling up a passage from Psalm 94, verses 18 and 19. And I wait to hear the beat. And then I start with a string of words. When I said my foot is slipping, your love, O Lord, supported me. When anxiety was great within me, your consolation brought me joy. When I said my foot is slipping, your love, O Lord, supported me. When anxiety was great within me, your consolation brought me joy. And it just keeps going like that. So you can hear how it's just boop, 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 right? It's just going along with the beat. And sometimes, depending on which passage I'm memorizing, and sometimes depending on what metronome setting I have, it depends on whether I do one syllable per beat or two or something like that. Like you can change it to be a little more staccato or whatever you want. However you memorize it faster, do that. So when I memorize something, like that was a passage that I had down, and it's a really boring sound, right? Like it just sounds like over and over, and if I just kept going, it would be the same. It's not meant for like the enjoyment of reading and listening, right? If I'm going to read it, I'm going to say, when I said my foot is slipping, your love, O Lord, supported me. When anxiety was great within me, your consolation brought me joy, right? When I read it, it sounds different than when I'm memorizing it. So during the action of memorizing, like I said, I'm only memorizing strings of words, not for the actual meaning. And then I make sure that I go back and kind of like steep myself in the meaning again after, so that it's not just random strings of words. So in Psalm 40, this is one that I'm currently memorizing. And you'll see that when I go through one phrase, sometimes I repeat it until I feel like I've got it down, and then I add another phrase. And then I do the same and over and over and over. So it gets a little repetitive. That's the point. You can memorize this with me, or you can just kind of listen to how it goes. But I'm going to start the metronome again, and then I'm going to start giving you a sample of how I do memorizing a new passage. So here's the metronome. Clicking. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. So that was Psalm 41 and 2. So I would just keep repeating that until I feel like I really have it down. And when I do it the first time, I'm looking at it. And then as I get going, I make sure that I'm taking, like, I take my eyes off of it and I keep the beat and I keep saying the phrase, and then I glance back to make sure I got it right, and I keep going. So that it's not just like I'm reading it, I'm reading it, I'm reading it. So I start by reading it to the beat, and then I start kind of like glance, say it, glance, say it. And then by the end of the time that I'm memorizing, I can just say it and then check back kind of at like each big section. Oh, yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got it. And again, then I would go back and I would say it so that I can actually hear the meaning. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock, and he gave me a firm place to stand. That's Psalm 40, 1 and 2. So I hope that you try this too. It's kind of a cool technique, I think, for memorizing something relatively quickly because it's just so repetitive and so catchy. If you want to memorize these verses, I will link to the translations that I was using. Also, I'll link to the metronome just so that you can see it. Otherwise, just Google search metronome and hit enter, and then the top thing will be a metronome. And if you have any of your own techniques that you use to memorize really quickly, then put those in the comments. I'm happy to see those. I can always use some more tips in this area because I don't memorize as well. But this is something that is very important to me because as it comes up later on, then these things will just kind of pop into my head, right? And sometimes they pop into with the rhythm that it goes along with. So like I'll think, oh, when anxiety is great within me, your love, oh Lord, brought me joy. Or I think in the original translation that I memorized, it was like brought joy to my soul. So that's always what I think of. But it's interesting to see like when it pops up, right? You can just instantly hear that again, and even without the metronome, I still kind of hear it in that beat. Which is good because it's catchy, right? And so I want to have something catchy to basically stop my thoughts, like when they become really anxious or when they're becoming like, going off the rail in this direction. I want to just be able to stop, catch myself, and then say, no, this is what's true. So this is what helps me. Let me know what helps you, and subscribe for more videos every Wednesday. And definitely subscribe because we're going to have a Sword and Savvy interview series with established Christian entrepreneurs coming up very soon in the summer. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.